She walked out of school one afternoon, and never made it home. No witnesses. No ransom. No answers. Just silence. What happened to her stayed hidden for nearly a decade, until one man refused to let the truth stay buried. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is the kind of story that stays with you long after it's over. And if you've already been down this road before, what do you think really happened to Emily? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. It was a normal Thursday afternoon. The kind of day that didn't feel special in any way, until it did. Emily had just finished her art class, like she always did on Thursdays. She texted me from the schoolyard, "Mom, I'm heading out now." I remember looking at my phone and smiling. She was such a responsible kid. 12 years old, bright, creative, always sketching something in her notebook, even during dinner. People used to say she'd be an illustrator one day. Maybe even famous. I was only 2 blocks away, waiting for her near the bus stop. It was just a short walk from her school. I turned around for a second, maybe less, to check traffic. That's all it was. 1 second. And when I looked back, she wasn't there. Just gone. The street was crowded with kids leaving school, parents picking up their children, teachers waving goodbye at the gates. But no one saw anything. No one noticed when she disappeared. We called her phone. It rang. Once. Twice. Then silence. I ran back into the school, asked the staff if she had gone back inside. They said no. I checked every store nearby. Nothing. We filed a missing person report that evening. The police came, asked questions, took pictures of Emily's room, her favorite hoodie, her backpack. They said they'd do everything they could. But after the first 48 hours passed without a lead, I could see the worry in their eyes turn into something else. Doubt. Weeks went by. Flyers were posted across town. News stations covered it for a while, local TV, then national. People shared her face online. But as time passed, the headlines faded. Life moved on. Not for me. Never for me. Because I know what I saw. Or rather, what I didn't. She was right there. Then she wasn't. Like she vanished into thin air. And I've never stopped trying to find out where she went. I don't remember getting into the car. I remember walking out of school, texting my mom, and then, nothing. The next thing I knew, I woke up to a bright light shining in my eyes. My head was pounding. My mouth felt dry, like I'd been asleep for days. The room was small. Cold concrete floor. White walls that felt too clean, like they had just been painted. No windows. No clock. Just one flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling. And a camera. In the corner. Always watching. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Maybe someone's idea of a joke. Or maybe I was dreaming. But the hours passed, days, maybe, and no one came. I screamed until my voice was gone. I pounded on the door until my fists hurt. Nothing. Just silence. Then I heard him. His voice came through a speaker in the wall. Calm. Gentle. Like he was trying to comfort me. "You're safe here," he said. "The world is too cruel." I asked him who he was. I begged him to let me go. He never answered. Just left food under the door every few hours. Water. Bread. Sometimes fruit. Never warm meals. Never anything hot. He watched me eat. Watched me sleep. Watched me cry. There was no way to tell time. No sunlight. No shadows. No stars at night because there were no nights. The lights never fully turned off. Just dimmed a little, like dusk settling over a town you can't see. I started talking to myself just to hear a voice. I counted steps across the room. I memorized every crack in the wall. I tried to stay strong. But after a while, even hope feels like a lie you tell yourself to survive. And the worst part? I didn't know what he wanted. I still don't. All I knew was that I was alone. Trapped. And somewhere out there, my mom was still looking for me. Time stopped making sense after a while. Without windows, without sunlight, without anything to mark the passing of days, I lost all grip on it. It could have been weeks. It could have been months. Maybe even longer. I don't know when I stopped counting. He never gave me a name. Not for myself, not for him. I wasn't Emily anymore. I didn't get birthdays or holidays. No memories were allowed to grow roots. Just this room. Just this life. He fed me. Not like a mother feeds her child, with love, with warmth, but like someone feeding an animal they've caged. Always the same foods. Always the same times. Bread. Milk. Fruit. Sometimes a hard-boiled egg. Never anything that felt like comfort. And then came the lessons. He would speak through the speaker, sometimes for hours. He told me the world outside was dangerous. That people lied. That trust was a trap. That no one could be believed, especially those who said they loved you. I used to cry during those lessons. At first, I screamed at him to stop. I told him he was wrong. But every time I did, the lights would stay on for what felt like forever. No rest. No escape. So I learned to listen. To nod. To survive. Eventually, I stopped crying altogether. There were moments, brief ones, when I thought maybe I could escape. I'd press my ear against the door, listening for footsteps, for sounds beyond it. But there was nothing. Only silence. And over time, even the idea of escape began to feel pointless. I started to believe him. Not everything he said, but enough. Enough to wonder if my mom had really been looking for me. Enough to doubt whether she still was. Years passed like that. Silent years. Empty years. I don't know how many. I stopped hoping. I stopped fighting. I just existed. Later, when I finally got out, when I saw the sun again, I met a psychologist who tried to explain what had happened to me. She called it learned helplessness. She said it's what happens when someone is trapped so long, they forget what freedom feels like, even when it's right in front of them. She said it wasn't weakness. She said it was survival. But back then? Back in that room? I didn't know the word for what I was becoming. I only knew that I wasn't me anymore. People stopped looking long before they stopped talking. After the first few months, the news moved on. Emily's face disappeared from the front pages. The volunteers stopped handing out flyers. The town went back to normal. But for me? Nothing was ever normal again. At first, I threw myself into the search. I knocked on every door. I hired a private investigator. I went on TV, begged whoever had taken her to bring her home. I didn't care how tired I was, how broken I felt, I couldn't stop. If I stopped, that meant I'd given up. And I never would. But people started to change around me. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Then came the whispers. The questions no one asked out loud but everyone seemed to think, did she do something? Was it her fault? Even the police began asking harder questions. They wanted to know if there were fights at home. If Emily had run away. If I had a history of mental health issues. It felt like every answer I gave was being twisted into suspicion. And then there was Sarah. Emily's older sister. 17 when it happened. She loved music, hated school, and had this fierce way about her, always defending Emily, always standing up to me when she thought I was being too strict. Maybe too strict? I don't know. I just wanted them safe. I wanted them close. But after Emily vanished, everything between us changed. Sarah became quiet. Angry. Distant. She used to blame me, said I wasn't paying enough attention that day, said I should have been faster, smarter, stronger. I tried to hold our family together. But then, she left. Out of nowhere, she got accepted into a performing arts school in another state. Said it was her dream. Said she needed to go. I begged her not to leave. Emily was still out there. We had to find her. She didn't even say goodbye properly. And after that? No calls. No messages. Just silence. Like she erased herself from our lives. Years later, I talked to the detective who handled Emily's case. He told me something strange. That right after Sarah left, someone tried to file an anonymous tip saying Emily had been seen in another city. But by the time they followed up, there was nothing. No trace. No witness. He said it was odd. Said he looked into Sarah's new school records, but they had no record of her ever enrolling. It didn't prove anything. Not really. But it stayed with me. Like a stone in my shoe, small, but always there. And then I met David Rourke, the lawyer who helped represent families in missing children cases. He reviewed Emily's file and said something I'll never forget. There are things here, he told me, that don't sit right. Things that feel off. But without proof, without a body, without a confession, there's nothing we can do. So we waited. Again. Still. And the world kept moving forward. Just not ours. It started with a man I'd never met, in a city I'd never been to. Daniel King wasn't someone I would have crossed paths with under any other circumstances. He was a tech mogul, 42 years old, rich beyond imagination, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, he had made it his mission to help find missing children. He didn't do it for the press, though they followed him everywhere. He didn't do it for politics or fame. He did it because, as he told me once, some things are worth more than money. And some people get forgotten too easily. His foundation specialized in something called digital forensics, going through dark web footage, encrypted files, anything that might lead to a child who had vanished. Most of it led nowhere. But one day, late at night, while his team was reviewing archived data from an old raid on a hidden network, they found something strange. A short video. Less than 30 seconds. Grainy. Poor lighting. A girl sitting in what looked like a bare room, her face mostly hidden. She was wearing plain clothes. No markings. No signs of violence. But there was something about the way she moved. The way she held her hands. It reminded them of Emily. Not enough to prove anything. Not even close. But enough to make Daniel dig deeper. He authorized everything. Facial recognition software. AI-assisted pattern analysis. They compared the video frame by frame with school photos, family videos, anything we had from before Emily disappeared. They studied posture, speech patterns, even breathing rhythms. And then came the first match. Not a perfect one. Not yet. But strong enough that Daniel picked up the phone and called me himself. I don't have proof, he said, but I think your daughter is still alive. I remember dropping the phone. I couldn't breathe. I hadn't heard those words in years. Not from someone who actually meant it. From that moment on, everything changed. Because now, there was a lead. And Daniel King didn't just chase leads. He followed them until they broke open. We ran the analysis 3 times. Then 4. We brought in experts from different fields, facial recognition specialists, behavioral analysts, even someone who had worked with the CIA on identity verification. Every time, the result came back the same. It was her. Emily Harper. Still alive. Still out there. She would have been 21 by then. Nearly 9 years had passed since she disappeared. 9 years without a word. 9 years of silence. But now we had something better than hope. We had data. The video had been uploaded through a burner server, routed through multiple proxies, but our team managed to trace part of the signal back to a remote area near Bozeman, Montana. No major cities nearby. Just forests. Mountains. And a lot of empty land where no one would hear you scream. I made one phone call. To the FBI. I didn't go through lawyers or press contacts. I went straight to Agent Marcus Bell, one of the few people in law enforcement who still believed Emily's case mattered. He listened. He asked questions. Then he said 2 words that changed everything. We're in. Within 72 hours, they had boots on the ground. Surveillance teams. Tactical units. Helicopters circling above a patch of forest that hadn't seen this much attention since the Cold War. And then came the raid. They found the entrance hidden beneath a collapsed barn. A reinforced steel hatch buried under layers of dirt and concrete. Once they got inside, what they saw, it was worse than anyone imagined. A basement converted into a prison. Lights dimmed to mimic day and night. Food stored in bulk. Medical supplies. Cameras everywhere. And at the center of it all. Emily. She was thinner than I expected. Her hair was long, tangled. She wore oversized clothes that didn't fit right. When they found her, she was curled up in a corner, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes wide like she'd forgotten what another human being looked like up close. She didn't run. She didn't cry. Not at first. She just stared. When they finally carried her outside, into the sunlight, she flinched like it hurt. Like it was too bright. Too real. And then she looked up. At the sky. That moment? That look on her face? I've built companies worth billions. I've shaken hands with presidents. But nothing in my life has ever felt as powerful as watching her see the open air for the first time in almost a decade. She's alive, I whispered to myself. And for the first time in years, the world finally started turning again. They brought her to a recovery center outside of Denver, specialized in trauma, memory loss, and reintegration after long-term isolation. They had psychologists, neurologists, even specialists who worked with former hostages. But no one really knew what to do with Emily. She didn't speak at first. Not for days. When she finally did, she didn't say her name. She didn't know it. She didn't recognize me when I walked into the room. Her own mother. One of the doctors called it re-identification trauma, when someone has been stripped of their identity for so long that they don't know how to be themselves again. Or if they ever were. She flinched when people touched her. She stared at mirrors like she was seeing a stranger. She didn't cry when we hugged. She just stood there, frozen. Then came the drawings. Every morning, she would sit at a small table by the window and draw. At first, just shapes. Lines. Circles. But soon, they started to look like something real. A house. A bedroom. A backyard with a swing set. Our house. The one we lived in before everything fell apart. But then she drew something else. A necklace. Simple, silver chain. With a tiny star pendant. I saw it and my breath caught in my throat. That necklace wasn't mine. It wasn't something we'd bought for her. I hadn't even thought about it in years. Because that necklace had come from Sarah. Emily's birthday gift, the year before she disappeared. Wrapped in pink paper. Tied with a bow. Sarah had picked it out herself. I showed the drawing to one of the therapists. He asked Emily where she remembered it from. She didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she whispered, "It was hers, before it was mine." That was the first crack in the wall. The first piece of her past that came back, not through words, not through memories, but through art. Just like when she was little. And maybe, just maybe, it was the start of bringing her back to us. All the way back. They started looking at Sarah again. Not just the way people whisper behind closed doors. Not just the way I sometimes wondered in the quiet hours of the night. This time, it was official. Agent Bell reopened her file. They pulled old phone records, bank statements, social media logs. Things we never knew existed. And slowly, piece by piece, a picture began to form, one that made no sense, until it did. Sarah wasn't where she said she was. She had built a life in Chicago, quiet, stable, almost too normal. A job at a music school. A boyfriend who said she never talked about her past. Friends who described her as private, but kind. But when they dug deeper, they found something else. A burner phone number linked to a man named Stephen Hale. At first, they thought he was just another name in the database. Another suspect connected to missing children cases across the Midwest. But then they ran his prints through the system and matched him to an old arrest record from over 15 years ago, before Emily disappeared. And guess what? He used to live less than 10 miles from us. The same town. The same schools. The same parks where Emily used to ride her bike. Then came the messages. Encrypted chats recovered from a deleted account. Old emails buried under layers of data. Conversations between Sarah and Hale. Talking about Emily. About how perfect she was. How she didn't understand real pain. How she got everything without even trying. It wasn't just jealousy. It was obsession. And worse? There were payments. Small, untraceable transfers. From Hale to Sarah's account. Months before Emily vanished. They weren't proof of kidnapping. But they were proof of something. That Sarah knew more than she ever let on. That maybe, just maybe, she didn't run away from our family. Maybe she ran toward something else. Toward him. And when Agent Bell confronted her, face to face, in a small interrogation room in Chicago, she didn't deny it. She just looked down and whispered, "I didn't want to hurt her." But she did. More than anyone ever could. They arrested Stephen Hale in a quiet suburb outside of Missoula. No dramatic chase. No standoff. He just opened the door, looked at the agents like he'd been expecting them, and said, "I didn't do anything she didn't agree to." In court, his lawyer doubled down. She wasn't taken, he told the judge. She came willingly. With her sister. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. There was no physical evidence linking Sarah directly to the kidnapping. No fingerprints in that basement. No DNA. But there were records, messages, calls, money. Enough for the prosecution to bring her in as a key witness. Or maybe something more. When she walked into that courtroom, I barely recognized her. She was older, thinner, her hair pulled back like she was trying to disappear. She sat across from me without looking my way. At first, she answered the questions calmly. Said she met Stephen online. Said they talked about music, about pain, about feeling invisible. Said she thought he understood her. Then the prosecutor leaned forward and asked the question I had screamed inside my head for years. "Did you help him take your sister?" Sarah didn't answer right away. She looked at the floor. Then at the judge. Then finally, at Emily. Emily, who sat in the front row, still quiet around strangers, still unsure of the world even after months of recovery. Emily, who had started remembering bits and pieces, songs we used to sing, smells from our kitchen, the sound of Sarah's laugh when she played piano. And Sarah whispered it. Yes. Not because she wanted to. But because she had no choice. Stephen had videos. Not of Emily. Of her. Things she did. Things she said. Things he could have leaked if she ever tried to stop him. He controlled me, she said, voice breaking. Before he ever touched her. He already had me. Then came the last line. The one that broke Emily's heart all over again. I didn't want to hurt her, Sarah said. But I was tired of being second. And then, turning toward her sister for the first time. You were always the favorite. Emily didn't cry. She just stood up. Walked out. And I watched her go, knowing that some truths don't heal. Some truths just reopen the wounds. They didn't send me back home. Not right away. Not ever, maybe. The court said I needed stability. Protection. Time to heal without the weight of everything that came before. So they placed me with someone unexpected. Daniel King. He didn't ask for it. He didn't campaign for it. But when the system looked for a guardian who could give me space, safety, and silence when I needed it most, he stepped up. I remember the first night in his house. It was quiet. Bigger than I expected. Windows everywhere, like he wanted the sky to feel close. He showed me my room and said one thing. You've lived in darkness long enough. Not more night. It was the first time someone talked to me like I wasn't broken. Like I just needed time to remember how to be whole again. At first, I stayed inside. Didn't answer questions. Didn't look people in the eye. But slowly, things started to change. I began learning my name again, not just what it sounded like, but what it felt like. Emily. Mine. I learned to walk outside without flinching at every sound. Learned to tell day from night not by a light switch, but by the color of the sky. And then came the moment I'll never forget. It was late spring. The air was warm, but not too hot. Birds were singing somewhere I couldn't see. Daniel opened the back door and stood aside. You don't have to, he said. But you can. I walked out. The sun hit my face like something I'd only dreamed about. Bright. Real. Warm. I reached out like I could touch it. Like I had to make sure it was true. And then I cried. Not because I was sad. Because I was finally here. Finally free. Finally, me. The trial ended the way most stories like mine do, not with justice exactly, but with something close. Stephen Hale was sentenced to life without parole. They locked him away in a maximum security prison where he'd never see sunlight the same way again. He never apologized. Never showed regret. Just sat there, quiet, like he already knew his fate. Sarah got 10 years. Not for kidnapping. Not directly. But for aiding and abetting. For sending my life into that darkness, even if she didn't build the room herself. She didn't look at me when the sentence was read. I didn't expect her to. There were people who thought it wasn't enough. People who said I should hate her forever. But hatred is heavy. And I'm trying to carry only what I need to move forward. So I kept my name. Even though it hurts sometimes. Even though hearing it out loud still makes me flinch, like someone calling out to a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. But it's mine. And I earned it. Daniel started a foundation, Not More Night. It helps kids like me come back into the world. Find their names again. Their voices. Their light. He says I inspired it. But I think he's the one who gave me the chance to believe I could be more than just a victim. And now? Now I stand here. On a stage. In front of hundreds of people. No cameras watching me. No walls closing in. Just me. Speaking for every girl who disappeared and never came home. For every boy who was taken before they could grow up. For myself. I used to think the dark was endless. That I would live in it forever. But he forgot one thing. Even in the deepest silence, even in the coldest room. A spark waits. Patient. Waiting to become fire. And now? Now I burn. They always say that stories have power. That they can teach us, warn us, change us. But sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones we don't want to believe, until they're real. Mine is one of those. It's a story about loss. About silence. About how easily someone can disappear, not just from the world, but from themselves. But it's also a story about survival. About light that finds its way back, even after years in the dark. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it walks beside you. Talks to you. Listens. Smiles. It knows your fears, and uses them against you. And sometimes, it hides behind the people you love the most. But healing? Healing is louder than fear. Recovery is stronger than silence. And no matter how long the night, you can still find your way back to the light. If my story has taught me anything, it's that hope doesn't always look like a rescue mission or a miracle. Sometimes, it looks like breathing through another day. Sometimes, it looks like drawing one more picture. Sometimes, it looks like stepping into sunlight and finally believing it's real. So if you're watching this, wherever you are, don't turn away. Don't scroll past the next story just because it's hard to hear. Because someone out there might still need to be found. Someone might still need your voice. Your attention. Your belief. This isn't just my story. It's a warning. A lesson. And for some, it might be the first sign that they're not alone. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. Don't miss what comes next. Because there are more stories out there. More voices waiting to be heard. More girls who are still missing. And more truths hiding in the dark, waiting for someone brave enough to bring them into the light.